Buddhism for Today, The Essential Wisdom of the Threefold Lotus Sutra by Nikkyo Niwano. Part 2, The Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wondrous Dharma, Chapter 15, Springing Up Out of the Earth. This chapter of the Lotus Sutra introduces two particularly important points. First, the world-honored one refuses the offer of the bodhisattvas from the other Buddha lands in the universe to assist in teaching and transforming the living beings of the Saha world. Second, the Buddha entrusts this duty to the innumerable bodhisattvas who emerge from beneath the earth. The bodhisattvas who emerge from beneath the earth. The bodhisattvas who emerge from beneath the earth in this chapter signify people who have had a great deal of suffering and distress during their lives, but who, through accumulating the merits of practice in the very midst of these troubles, have achieved a highly enlightened state while leading ordinary lives. People like this, who have personally experienced and weathered much suffering and worry, possess real strength. They truly have the power to teach and transform others. The Buddha's entrustment of the Saha world to the bodhisattvas who emerge from beneath the earth teaches us that those of us who are living in this world are the ones who must transform it into a pure and peaceful place, and we can realize happiness in our lives through our own efforts. We are responsible for creating our own pure land where we live. We must bring about our happiness and well-being through our own efforts. The Buddha gives us such a reassuring and empowering teaching in this chapter. Shakyamuni Buddha himself passed through the same process of confronting suffering to finally reach supreme perfect awakening. Herein lies a clear difference between Buddhism and other religions. Though other religions each have their own magnificent teachings, people do not normally believe that the paths by which the founders of their religions attained their enlightened or exalted state can be realized by contemporary human beings. Some religions hold that their founders were sent by God, others that a god gave a revelation to the founder, and others that a god ascended to this world from a transcendent realm beyond the understanding of human beings. What Buddhism teaches, however, is that Shakyamuni was born as a human being, just like the rest of us, experienced the various sufferings and worries that characterize human life, aspired to awakening in order to liberate both himself and others, and practice spiritual disciplines. The truth that he realized after 6 years of effort is something we can comprehend, and the course by which he attained this awakening is clear for us to see. For this reason, we are confident that we too will certainly reach supreme perfect awakening one day, if we just follow Shakyamuni's teachings and traverse the same path. Precisely because Buddhism is a teaching that emerged from the circumstances of real life, which is to say, it emerged from beneath the earth, it is perfectly clear that we who live our lives in the real world can follow the example of Shakyamuni Buddha. Chapter 15 makes this point convincingly. One chapter in two halves. Another important consideration is that the introduction to the original dimension of the Lotus Sutra, the teaching of the original Buddha, comes in the first half of this chapter. The difference between the Buddha who appeared in history, the manifest Buddha, and the original Buddha is briefly explained on pages 30 to 32 and is also discussed in chapter 16, the lifespan of the eternal Tathagata. In the Lotus Sutra commentarial tradition, the first half of chapter 15 is considered the introductory section of the original dimension, while the latter half of this chapter, all of chapter 16, and the first half of chapter 17, specification of merits, form the main section of the teaching of the original Buddha, which together are called the one chapter in two halves. Thus chapter 15 occupies a pivotal position in the division of the Lotus Sutra, and we should read it with the greatest possible care. Chapter 15 opens immediately on the world-honored one, concluding his explanation of peaceful and agreeable practices. At this time, the innumerable bodhisattvas in the great assembly, who have gathered from other Buddha lands, rise from their seats, and placing their palms together in reverence, address the Buddha. World-honored one, if you allow us to do so, after the Buddha passes away, we will remain in this Saha world, constantly renewing our efforts to protect and uphold, read and recite, copy and make offerings to this sutra, and we will no doubt succeed in spreading this sutra by teaching it everywhere. Without any hesitation, the Buddha responds saying, "My good children, your intentions are greatly appreciated, but I will have to decline. This is because there is in fact already a multitude of bodhisattvas here in the Saha world, and every one of them has countless numbers of followers. After my passing, the responsibility for the roles of protecting and upholding, reading and reciting, and spreading this sutra by teaching it everywhere will belong to them. No sooner has the Buddha said this than the ground of the entire Saha world begins to shake violently, and suddenly, from out of this tumult, innumerable bodhisattvas emerge from beneath the earth. Their entire bodies glitter like gold, and every one of them possesses the very same 32 marks of Shakyamuni, which are the physical signs of the perfection of character. These bodhisattvas had long dwelled in the empty space below the Saha world, but when they heard what Shakyamuni Buddha had just explained to the assembly, they hurriedly emerged from beneath the earth in order to be at the Buddha's service, experiencing the suffering and worries of the Saha world in order to liberate people. It is highly significant that these bodhisattvas did not originally dwell within the earth, but in the infinite space below the Saha world. And it is also noteworthy that they emerged from beneath the earth and remained suspended in mid-air. In their former lives, these bodhisattvas had already freed themselves from delusion through the teachings of the Buddha, and the fact that they dwelled in infinite space signifies this. But when they learned that the Buddha would entrust them with the teaching and transformation of living beings of the Saha world, they prepared themselves by burrowing into the earth, and by experiencing suffering and distress, they accrued the spiritual discipline to attain the consciousness of bodhisattvas. Because of this, they rise into the sky once again after passing through the earth. Although these bodhisattvas had been free from delusion in their former lives, they voluntarily chose to experience the suffering and worries of the Saha world in order to liberate people here, and only after making serious efforts and finally breaking through are they able to convey the teachings to others. As discussed before, this is an extremely important process. One cannot acquire the transcendent power to really help the people of the Saha world without going through such an experience. That is what makes the example set by the bodhisattvas who emerge from beneath the earth such a valuable teaching. These bodhisattvas lead great assemblies of bodhisattvas, and each of the bodhisattvas in those assemblies brings along the living beings they themselves have personally taught and transformed. Some bring too many followers to count, others fewer, and still others come alone because they practice in solitude. After each of these countless bodhisattvas emerge from beneath the earth, they rise up to the jeweled stupa of the precious seven substances where the Tathagata, abundant treasures, and Shakyamuni Buddha are seated, revere them, and then praise the virtues of both Tathagatas, using the various methods employed by bodhisattvas to extol the Buddhas. Then they stand to one side, all the while gazing up in delight at the two world-honored ones. 50 lesser kalpas elapse from the time they emerge from beneath the earth until they have finished praising the virtues of the two Buddhas. During all this time, Shakyamuni Buddha sits in silence, as does the entire great assembly, but through the transcendent powers of the Buddha, these 50 lesser kalpas feel like only half a day. The four universal vows of bodhisattvas. Through the transcendent powers of the Buddha, the great assembly can see all of these bodhisattvas suspended in midair, filling the space of innumerable domains. There are four great leaders within this multitude, who are the most outstanding among them: superior practice, boundless practice, pure practice, and steadfast practice. These four bodhisattvas require some comment. As explained in the discussion of vows in Chapter 9, the universal vow that should be made by all who practice the way of the Buddha consists of four universal vows of bodhisattvas. Each of these four bodhisattvas represent one of these four primary vows that all bodhisattvas make. In other words, they symbolize the fundamental vows of all Buddhists. 1. However innumerable living beings are, I vow to liberate them all. The Bodhisattva's steadfast practice. 2. However immeasurable the defilements are, I vow to extinguish them all. The Bodhisattva pure practice. 3. However limitless the Buddha's teachings are, I vow to master them all. The Bodhisattva boundless practice. 4. However infinite the Buddha way is, I vow to realize it completely. The Bodhisattva superior practice. These four great bodhisattvas stand in front of the multitude of bodhisattvas who have emerged from beneath the earth, and with their palms joined together, they gaze up at Shakyamuni Buddha and inquire of him. World-honored one, are your ailments and troubles few? Are you living comfortably? Are those whom you seek to lead to liberation readily receiving the teaching, or do they cause the world-honored one to grow weary? The world-honored one graciously accepts their greetings and then says to the multitude of bodhisattvas, "Indeed, my good children, I am at ease, with no sufferings or troubles at all. All the living beings of this world are easily taught and transformed, and doing so does not make me grow weary. Why? Since long, long ago, these living beings have been constantly receiving my teachings, as well as paying homage to and revering the Buddhas of past ages, and in doing so, they cultivated the roots of goodness. Because of these causes and conditions, when all the living beings that are here now first saw me and heard my teachings, they received it in faith and embarked on the path to the awakening of the Tathagata, with the exception of those who first studied the teaching of lesser vehicles and assumed they were sufficient. The capacity for the teachings of people who make such assumptions does not easily change, but even living beings like them who hear the Dharma Flower Sutra can be led to the awakening of a Buddha. Although the Buddha was already advanced in age by this time, and the momentous task of teaching and transforming living beings was a considerable hardship, he did not find it burdensome or difficult in the least. This fact undoubtedly demonstrates his great benevolence and compassion. At this time, all the great bodhisattvas speak in verse expressing the following meaning. World-honored one, if the Buddha teaches and transforms living beings with his boundless mind, they will all certainly be liberated. Receiving teachings about the extremely profound wisdom of the Buddhas, all will believe deeply and understand what they have heard. We, too, are overjoyed. The world-honored one then praises these supreme leaders, the great bodhisattvas, saying, "Good, good, my good children. Your hearts make the Tathagata rejoice." At this time, Maitreya and his assembly of innumerable bodhisattvas see with their own eyes that the bodhisattvas who have emerged from beneath the earth are superior living beings of the very highest virtue, and because this is something none of them have ever before witnessed, it surprises them and leaves them with doubts. Maitreya is aware of the skepticism in the minds of his followers, and wants to resolve his own questions as well, so he composes a verse to this effect, asking the Buddha to explain the reason for all of this. From long ago, we have never before seen this multitude of countless bodhisattvas until now, world-honored one. Please explain this to us. Where did these beings come from, and why have they gathered here? All of these magnificent bodhisattvas have great transcendent powers and inconceivable wisdom. Their resolve is firm, and they possess great powers of forbearance. There is not a single living being who would not be delighted by the prospect of meeting such magnificent people. Where in the world have these bodhisattvas come from? While Maitreya is speaking, the countless Buddhas who are the embodiments of Shakyamuni Buddha all remain seated in silence. Each of these Buddhas has one attendant who has also witnessed this multitude of bodhisattvas emerge from beneath the earth. The attendants each ask their own Buddhas, "World-honored one, where have all these bodhisattvas come from?" Shakyamuni Buddha's embodiments all answer, "My good children, please wait a while. Maitreya Bodhisattva has already asked about this matter. Shakyamuni Buddha is about to reply, and you will be able to hear his explanation for yourself." Shakyamuni Buddha then answers Maitreya, "Good, Ajita, good. You have performed a great service by asking about such an important matter. I will now explain this to you. All of you must brace yourselves, armor yourselves with diligence, and fortify your will, in order to listen to what I am about to tell you. For the very first time, I will reveal to you my entity, who I really am, by unveiling just how grand the Buddha wisdom is, the kind of transcendent powers the Buddha possesses, and how, by using these abilities, he pours every ounce of his strength into teaching the Dharma. I will now show you just how awesome the Buddha's power to affect and transform all living beings really is." The Buddha then repeats himself in verse, since he is about to explain something that he has never before revealed. He wants the living beings in the great assembly to prepare themselves mentally, to be steadfast in their faith in the Buddha and the truth of his words, and to listen carefully to what he is about to tell them. And after repeating his caution in verse, Shakyamuni Buddha finally answers Maitreya's question. "Ajita, this multitude of bodhisattvas that you saw emerge from beneath the earth are living beings that I, following my awakening here in the Saha world, taught, instructed, and guided, that allowed them to compose themselves and eliminate the unwholesome states of their minds, and inspired them to embark upon the Buddha way." The Buddha continues speaking about these bodhisattvas for some time, explaining in detail the extent of their practice and the loftiness of their virtues. Maitreya, along with the Bodhisattvas and all the other living beings in the Great Assembly, wonders just how Shakyamuni Buddha could have, in such a short span of time, awakened the Bodhisattvas that had emerged from beneath the earth, and so they all joined their voices to raise the following question to the Buddha. World-honored one, when you were a prince you left behind the palace of the Shakyas and sat down at the place of the way, not far from the city of Gaya. It was there that you awakened to the Buddha wisdom. That was only some 40 years ago. How could you have opened the eyes of this multitude of great bodhisattvas to the Buddha wisdom in so short a time? Even with the power and virtues of the Buddha, it is indeed inconceivable. The number of bodhisattvas in this multitude is truly incalculable. Moreover, there is no way they could have become so magnificent without having eliminated their delusions by persisting in pure practices, and then accomplishing the bodhisattva way by continually performing virtuous practices since the distant past, under the tutelage of countless Buddhas. We cannot possibly understand how they could be your disciples. For instance, suppose that a 25-year-old man of youthful complexion and black hair, without even a hint of gray, were to point to some 100-year-old elderly people and say, "These are my children," and the 100-year-olds then point to the young man and say, "That is our father." Such a thing would be impossible to believe. Maitreya continues, it has only been about 40 years since the Buddha attained the way, yet this multitude of bodhisattvas have apparently been learning the way for countless thousands of millions of kalpas, and have mastered every aspect of the Buddha way. They are treasures among human beings, and would be extremely rare in any world of the universe. Just now, the world-honored one has told us that, after attaining the Buddha way, he inspired these bodhisattvas to seek awakening for the first time, and then guided them to supreme perfect awakening. It hasn't been very long since the world-honored one himself became a Buddha, yet he has been able to perform such a meritorious deed as this. We have also been studying the Buddha's teachings for a long time, and we know that the Buddha expounds appropriate teachings in response to the capabilities of the listener, and that all the words of the Buddha are true. Even fantastic things like what the Buddha is telling us now are presented with the profound intention of guiding us to awakening. After the passing of the Buddha, however, if beginners who have just set out on the way of the Bodhisattva hear this statement, they may see it as a contradiction, neither believe nor accept it, and thus end up accumulating the heavy karma of an offense against the Dharma. We beg you to explain this to us in detail, and clear up the doubts we have so that good men and women in future ages will not experience doubts when they hear about this. Maitreya then repeats his question in verse. The world-honored one replies to Maitreya by explaining all this in detail in the next chapter, the lifespan of the eternal Tathagata, where he reveals his entity, the true reality of the Buddha. The verse spoken by Maitreya Bodhisattva in this section of the chapter includes the following important lines that describe the Bodhisattvas from beneath the earth, which I quote directly from the sutra. And these children of the Buddha are as untainted by worldly things as the lotus flower in the water. These words exemplify the ideal of human life and existence that the Lotus Sutra teaches us, not to withdraw from the world, but to lead beautiful and pure lives within the world, and moreover, to strive to make the entire society equally pure and beautiful. This is the ideal of the Lotus Sutra. The very title of the Sutra, the Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wondrous Dharma, expresses this ideal.